I can't see anything. Okay. Is this it here? Yeah.
Greetings, greetings. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
You made it. Now we're having some issues last time getting you in. What's up, Liv?
Good afternoon.
Or good afternoon, yeah. One of those. East Coast, right? What's going on, Dustin? Greetings, Tree Marie. Greetings, Alchemy Gold. What's good, Jason?
Oh, what's up, Trey?
All right, all right.
Grand Rising. Grand Rising.
Grand Rising.
All right. Hello from San Francisco.
Good morning, afternoon. How are you? All right. So, if you guys didn't see the post that I made and the website and also on the YouTube, I think that not only from the messages that I've been getting, but also with my own work, yeah, I guess it's been pretty intense. So I've decided to push everything back at least 1 week to give people more time to acclimate to step 1 in initiation into hermetics, and also for some of the new people who joined recently to kind of catch up. So this week, the session here is going to serve as more of a review or more of a question and answer kind of thing, and not so much as a progress to the next. All right. But yeah, I took it upon myself to do the step 1 with initiation into hermetics again after a few years, and yeah, I was able to pull some stuff out of myself that I didn't know was still there. I was able to work on some more of the shadow work that, of course I thought I had all settled, but obviously not. Which is just another reminder that this work is never done. As long as you live and breathe and continue to have experiences, there's always work to do. So yeah. Also, I had to realize that I might have the free time to be reading both of these books at once every day. Everyone may not also have that that opportunity. So I think that it would also be a good idea to kind of slow down just a little bit, like I said, so people can catch up. So how have you guys been taking the initiation into hermetics work so far?
I bought the companion guide.
Nice. Very nice. So have you looked into that yet? So have you been able to look into that yet?
Not yet.
Okay. It's very helpful to me. It's actually written in two parts. Well, if you got the purple cover like I had, but basically it's
Yes,
got
I
the
did.
original version,
Cover.
and then it's got the newer updated version in the front. So it's almost like you're getting twice the companion. Yeah.
Are you going to cover how to kind of use it and coincide?
I touch on it here and there. Mostly these videos are about the material that's in the original book. I am reading through the companion to see if there's anything helpful that can be used. And there is lots of stuff, but most of the focus is on the original books. All right, so for here and also in the chat, does anybody have any questions or comments regarding what you've gone through so far, as far as step 1 or anything before that, or the first 11 chapters of initiation into hermetics? No, not really.
Yes. I'm still using my PDF, waiting for my book. You know that this book is out of print, so I had to go and do some detective work to finally get it. And so I'm waiting for my book.
Mm-hmm.
But the body part, with the tailbone, um, the positive, the negative, the male and female. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I found that part very fascinating.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so that was very interesting. And we did find a little bit later that it also coincided with what was going on in mystical Kabbalah.
Yes.
Mm.
Mhm.
But basically, we're looking at the masculine and the feminine energies, the electric and the magnetic. And we see that for the most part, they pertain to either the left side or the right side. Just like the pillars of the tree of life, the masculine side is the left, the feminine is the right. So if you look at those designations of the body parts and what their energy is like, you'll see that, most of the time it's either going to be left or right, according to, the masculine or feminine. But if you also look at the function of those body parts, you can kind of see, for example, how it talks about the inside of the eyes. I think it said that the inside of the eyes were magnetic, just like you're pulling in the vision through your eyes.
Mhm.
But yeah, it doesn't really give application for those things just yet, but it's more of just for you to kind of get an imagination visual, just to kind of see what you're going to be working with later on through the book.
Yeah, I found it very powerful.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, it hit me. It hit like an big aha moment.
Mm-hmm. Even when you look at the the sexual parts,
Mm-hmm.
electric and magnetic, attracting and propelling.
Yeah, I'm still like bouncing it around in my mind. Like I get it, but it's about how to use it. But I'm figuring that it will be, the usage will come as we go on through, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, I get it. But I'm trying to figure it out now. I need to calm down.
Yeah, and that's always the impulse, the temptation. But I love this book and Initiation into Hermetics, excuse me, Mystical Kabbalah, because they're written in such a way that it builds slowly, gradually builds. And as long as you don't skip ahead, before you know it, when you look back, you'll have learned so much because it covers it so slow and so gradual.
Yes. Have to be patient, definitely.
Who am I speaking with, by the way?
This is Sophia from San Francisco.
Okay, Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Okay, that'll be easy to remember because this also ties into Gnosticism and Sophia.
Yeah.
Merge. Congratulations, Jason. He says he just had a granddaughter called Sophia last Saturday.
Good name. It's helped me a lot.
Nice.
Give your children good names from the beginning. It will help them a lot. Open road.
Yes. Yeah, names tie into etheric patterns. Etheric patterns are what I've really been learning about a lot the past few months. It's the etheric patterns that generate what actually happens on the physical plane. It always happens above before it happens below first. And that's a big part of why the magical work that we do, even working with the tarot, all these things happen in the plane of Yetzirah, the astral plane. The physical plane is just the culmination of everything, just the final result. But the magic, for the most part, takes place in that astral plane, the plane of Yetzirah,
Okay.
which is what we're currently talking about in mystical Kabbalah. I like it because mystical Kabbalah gives more form to some of the things that I've been saying. In the past, I've talked about how you've got the physical plane, then on top of that, you've got the astral, and on top of that, you got the mental. And that's the Hermetic Kabbalistic lineup. The physical plane is traditionally called Asaya, and that correlates with the earth element. Right above that is the world of Yetzirah, and that correlates with the air element, and that's the astral plane. And right above that is the world of Bria, and that deals with water. And of course, above that is the world of Atziluth, and that deals with fire.
Mm-hmm.
All that to say, when it comes to manifestation, it happens originally in that top realm. And through that pattern that's been created, it trickles down and manifests in the realm below it. And that cycle continues until it manifests on this physical plane. So for practicality's sake, when reading tarot and being able to see what's going to happen, this, that, and the third, what we're actually looking at is the pattern that's being formed on the plane above. When we're trying to make change, we're doing that on the plane above, and it trickles down.
Yes, yes.
Everything relates to etheric patterns, even music,
Yeah, I believe that. That makes
even
sense.
culture and clothing styles and the words that we use. Because the thing about the physical plane is that it is in a circle. It is a cycle of cycles. It's like a clock. Everything in the physical plane repeats over and over and over. There's nothing new under the sun, they say. So to understand what's going on the physical plane, you've got to catch the pattern. And what you realize is that the pattern that plays out on the physical realm has actually been in process in the realm above. That's why you see, Nancy Pelosi and her crew, when it comes to Black Lives Matter and they want to get positive favor with Black people, what do? They slap on some kente cloth and they kneel and put their fist up. That's because they're trying to get into the etheric pattern of Black people. They're trying to, blend in.
Mm-hmm.
But this works on every level with everything. That's why people imitate. That's why companies have you wear a uniform because you get into the etheric pattern.
Exactly.
So this magic stuff, it applies to everything. It's not just for when you light your candle and you have your incense going. It's everyday life. And the more that we're able to see that and break it down and identify it, the easier time we have with lining up with the things that we actually want.
Let me ask you a question. You are probably not having this problem, but I'm having this problem. I'm having problems like meditating. I mean, I just can't. Usually when I lay down and meditate, I'm boom. But lately I've been having a lot of interruptions. Has that been happening to anybody else?
Yeah. Well, I remember, how that would happen in the beginning a lot. It's like you really have to put forth that extra effort to break through. And it seems that what's happening is that your physical body and your conscious mind is so used to the consistent distraction as a way of life that the minute you start to tear away from it, like a child, when you have a young child, and it seems like whenever he or she sees you on the phone or talking to somebody else, suddenly they will fight tooth and nail for all of your attention. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, but what I'm going through is like my phone will start like all of a sudden I lay down to meditate, and then all of a sudden all of these what do they call, like these I want to say not advertising, but they're calling to try to sell me insurance. They're calling to try to, you know, for a job. They're calling for do you need, all those kind of, things, and and it's like one right after another. And so then I go and I shut my phone off, and then the the lawnmower goes off. Somebody, then I
Yeah.
shut the door, you know, and then all of a sudden, when I shut the door, I'm in there 2 minutes, and then someone knocks on my door for delivery, and I'm just like, I've been trying to meditate for the past half hour, and this is ridiculous. And every time I try to, I get interrupted. So I'm like, what is going on?
Well, I think that qualifies for the same thing that I was talking about.
Hmm.
On a personal internal level, yes, your body will fidget, you'll get distracted, da 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 da. But on an external level, we're dealing with the world at large, which is still patterned after those etheric patterns. So when you start shifting your pattern from being a meat puppet that is regulated by distractions and your five senses, when you start moving out of that, the world at large now takes a bigger step to try to keep you contained in the etheric pattern of being a meat puppet.
Oh,
Being
okay. I'm okay. I got it. So you telling me it's an energy thing?
yes.
Okay. All right. Got it. Now I understand. Okay.
We talk about the Garden of Eden and man being a servant to the gods, especially referencing the ancient Sumerian myth of the Anunnaki and whatnot. The Garden of Eden is a circle and a cycle, and man was created to serve God. But his etheric pattern was to be, just pretty much a puppet to the five senses so that he can be easily manipulated. But the thing is, speaking of Gnosticism and Sophia, the gift that we've been given is the ability to transcend that, the opportunity to transcend that. But it isn't easy. It takes focus. It takes a lot of focus to break past those barriers of distraction. First, the distraction is internal. When that no longer contains us, the distraction becomes external. But there will come a point where you move past all those things.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Drunkard Cat. I appreciate that. But yeah, it's not even a battle. I don't like to look at it as a battle. It's training, it's practice. You know, just like you start any new sport or new hobby, you're terrible, but you get better with practice.
Hmm.
The more that you're moving into a different etheric pattern. So the old one is trying to keep you in place. Just, you know, not with evil intentions or anything, just because that's the way it is. But of course, the more that you practice this, the more that you'll start to see that it becomes easier gradually.
Mm.
You know, look for small signs of success that you can appreciate. You know, you were able to do it for 3 minutes, for 5 minutes. Look for small signals of success and celebrate those. It goes a long way psychologically when you're able to reward yourself for baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it really helps to be good to yourself, to be kind to yourself. It does not serve you at all. And I'm not saying you do this, but a lot of people do this. It doesn't serve you at all to do negative reinforcement, you know, to beat yourself up or to try to talk down or negative on yourself to do better. That actually doesn't work psychologically. It goes a lot further if you congratulate yourself for the tiny baby steps. For me, I use things like food or maybe buying a treat, you know, like some type of object that I enjoy or something like that. It goes a long way because, like I said, I always refer to the human body as an animal. And just like you train a dog or any other animal to behave in a certain way, you got to do the same thing for yourself because you actually have at least 4 bodies. We're only familiar with the first one, which is the physical. And just like we have those 4 worlds, there's a corresponding body for each of those worlds. And while the potential for those bodies exist, they're not fully developed and realized. But that's literally what we're doing reading Initiation into Hermetics. If you notice on each one of these steps, it has the magical schooling of the body, of the spirit, and the soul.
Mm-hmm.
And those correspond to 3 of those bodies. The final body, you begin to reach once you finish the process.
Okay, makes sense.
And I'm just giving an overview so we can kind of just have an idea of where we're headed with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Greetings to telepathic God. Okay, looking through the chat just to see if anybody has any questions or standout comments. Peace and greetings to everybody just joining us. Usually every Sunday we go over what we've been studying with Initiation into Hermetics and Mystical Kabbalah. But as I mentioned earlier, today is kind of an extension, kind of a week off, kind of a recap, because I myself have been doing some intense shadow work, and most certainly a lot of people have been saying that they've been going through a lot. So that's kind of what happens. Just like Sophia, what you were mentioning about the meditation and how these external distractions. Well, honestly, that happens for everybody, just to different degrees. Like for me, when I began to do the step 1 exercise again after 5 years, I began to see that there were things inside of me that I thought were completely dealt with, but were not. So I had to take a moment to do some work.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit draining, but definitely necessary. Definitely necessary. would anybody like to share anything that they found from their step one, the mirror exercises? And a lot of this can be really personal, but if anyone feels comfortable sharing, it may help somebody else.
So I could share mine. Basically, I'm sorry, I'm outside. I decided to take the scenic Sunday route. But on my story, basically something happened where I was kind of forced into young, and then basically young, I got into just the shadow work through young, and then through the occult stuff through young. But I basically sat down, made a list of all the people I love the most, and then I asked them, like, "Yo, can you tell me the worst qualities about me you can basically notice for my whole life?" And what it's really hard at first, just the thought of it, but once you actually do it, you realize like these people love you, and it's just kind of saying like, "Hey man, you need to work on your jump shot a little," or something like that. Like you realize it's not like an attack on your person. Like none of it is. And once you start, I think once you start seeing it that way, that was like, oh, it's not really an attack on you, or it's not really definitive of who you are as a person. Then it becomes easier to manage and yeah, you know. So so I'm doing the exercise now, even though before I kind of like I had it scattered, like, so I'm just gathering what everyone said. I'm gonna put it down. I'm gonna put some stuff down for me and try to reach the 100. Yeah, and just take it from there.
Awesome.
But I say it should be welcomed. As soon as you can realize that those words aren't you, I think the easier stuff becomes.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And that's what we find about this type of work, is that it's stuff that's around us all the time, but we never really take the critical analysis of it. And in taking the critical analysis, we notice just how much of an impact it has on our everyday lives. How people react to us, how we react to their reactions, Relationships that we have with others has everything to do with the relationship we have within ourselves, because the outside is a reflection of the inside. You don't really see that until you do this type of work. I love it. Zacchaeus Steed asks a question. Trav, how do you stay within your frame? I have a dilemma of tapping into people's energy when I'm half asleep. Like sometimes I accidentally talk to people and stuff. Yeah, I think I kind of see what you mean there. But again, like anything else, it's practice, and it's really holding focus. And holding focus, I think, has a lot to do with being aware of your current state. And I know it's kind of tough even when you're falling asleep, but I can tell you, if you practice maintaining your frame enough, you can carry it with you into your dreams. Because I think I've spoken before about how, I found myself in a nightmare or a lucid dream, and I was able to maintain my frame. I was able to actually repeat that: maintain your frame, be ever vigilant, exert your influence, always be leading. Repetition is definitely one of the ways to get into your subconscious mind. So what I can tell you, Zacchaeus Steed, about that is just to be aware of yourself at all times. Practice awareness. The more you practice it, the longer you practice it, the better you get at it. And that's very crucial, because as human animals, what makes us animals and what makes us puppets are the strings. What are the strings? The strings are our emotional reactions. We all have people in our lives who manipulate us through emotional reactions. A lot of times we don't notice it, but there are some people in our lives who know just what to say to us to trigger us, or know just what to do to us or for us to trigger us. And we don't realize that those are puppet strings. We can distance ourselves from those people, but if they come back and do that again, we're right back at it. So the main thing is to become aware of who you are, where you are right now. Be aware of your intent, and every action you make, be aware of why you're doing it. And the more that you're able to practice that, the more you can start to cut those strings. Because there's some people, they base their whole relationship with you on how they can use you. And the only way that you're going to be able to break out of that is to be aware of your triggers. And that's a huge result of what we're working on with this step one. And a lot of times these are family members, you know, and it's not always like they're trying to hurt you. It's just behavior. It's the human behavior. Most all of these relationships are different levels of manipulation. And I know manipulation has a negative connotation, but you know, that's just how people are.
Peace, everybody.
What?
Peace, Trav. I wanted to say one thing about the shadow work. With doing the shadow work, I kind of have like a technique that I kind of been doing for a while. It's kind of like I make a joke about who I was that day, excuse me, at night. So I hold like as I meditate, I hold like a mock funeral for myself. Sort of like samurais always think about, you know, their death. So with the internally extracting or bringing out what we have, or the components or elements that we hold within ourselves that are considered to be, or what's labeled the negative, or quote unquote our shadow, I bury those things from that day. So every night I get rid of it, and because I accept it, because I accept who I am, and I accept every part of who I am. I know that the I am and not the experience of this living mass of flesh, or my conditioned experiences, but I know that I do still, that's still a reality. So with the shadow work, I just have to realize, accept, and then bury it. And I kind of learned that, I found that interesting that years ago I'd done some reading, and I came across something about Martin Luther King, that he actually was a very funny dude in real life to people. They say he would crack jokes all the time, and something that he used to do to people, he would preach there as a joke. He would preach their funeral to them as a joke when they would gather up before they were going out for their marches. So when I thought about that, I said that's actually pretty serious, but it's kind of, because I have a weird humor, so I kind of found humorous in that. But at the same thing, when you look at that as a warrior perspective, he was going out to do battle. He could have got killed a long time ago before he was killed. So he would preach these mock funerals of each other. So that's kind of where I use that same thing with the shadow work. So it's not like, you know, of course, how we read that we're supposed to be tough on ourselves. So by being tough on ourselves, we have to accept that shadow, that realizing, accepting, and extracting that is going to be a lifelong process. We're never not going to be our shadow, but we have to accept it, and we have to bring it back to the elemental forces, and we have to decompose that thing. And through decomposing, we know that feeds the soil to bring about life. So the next day after I wake up, I ask myself, before I really get into my morning meditation, what can I do today better that I didn't do yesterday with myself? So I continuously give away, or I accept, and I formulate the elements so I can be balanced within myself, if that makes sense with the shadow work.
Yeah.
it's a whole nother mindset to actually consider your death. You know, most of us spend our time running away from that concept.
We're born, as soon as we come out the womb, we're dying. So once I accepted that within the occult world, and I've kind of sat within growing up in Connecticut, I kind of I used to go to if anybody's ever heard of the Warrens were like ghost hunters, and they used to do a lot of presentations and stuff like that. Like they did movies like The Hauntings and stuff, but through going to those gatherings where they would bring these things, I met occultists, and they kind of spoke about that you should accept the fact that you are going to die. So when doing this type of work, I kind of incorporate that and saying that it's not that I'm just macabre or just looking at the death, but I'm, you know, how they label ego death and things like that. I know that if I was to let my shadow self, the assholeness of myself, continue to just rage and be as it is, then I've not accepted it and I've not given it up. So I have to bury it. I have to let it be, let it rest, so to speak.
But as occultists, aren't we supposed to be developing the perspective of death is a transition?
Yeah, I was about to say, because nothing is at rest in the universe, so you can't really put it. You got to integrate what's in your shadow, don't you?
That's why I said I accept it.
Ah, okay, got it.
I ain't hear the accept part. My bad, Mo.
You know, you accept what's in your shadow, but you also
And that is the acceptance is the transition.
the acceptance is the transition, knowing that this is a part of me. It's like if Anakin Skywalker would have accepted the fact that he couldn't go back home like he was told and forget about the things that was past, he would have been balanced. But his destiny was as it is. So the whole thing is we have to accept. I have to accept my Anakin. I have to accept my Darth Vader, and I have to accept my destiny that's going to encompass both of those parts at the same time that I live and I experience them.
I understand that. All right, so let me put that shit in the sink. In a way, could you say Anakin's destiny was to be Darth Vader? Are we here to learn about ourselves through the shadow and actually express it rather than keep it in the background?
I think that's, to me, I think that's what life is about. It's about the experience of the physical form and all things that come with it. Because I always say the Earth is a death planet. Earth is a violent atmosphere. So by our incarnation, we of course have an individual destiny that we're here to fulfill, that we may have not fulfilled completely within our last incarnations. But at the same time we fulfill these things, we experience the wholeness. So pain, love, and all of this is wholeness. You won't know what one of the other is unless you experience them both at the same time. It's no different than nature. You know, we know daytime is daytime because it's not night anymore. So that's just the same thing. When we accept both sides of ourself, we experience the wholeness of ourself. Even the tree of life and things express that. We have the tree of life, then we also have the clip off or what's considered the shells, you know, of things.
Mm.
Duran, are you with us today? Or at least I should say, are you available to talk?
Hello, Travis. I'm here, man. How you doing? Can you hear me?
Very well, very well. How are you?
Oh, man. I'm doing okay. Thank you.
Okay. So it seems like I might have missed you the last two times. I really wanted to get to your question about the mystical Kabbalah. Have you found any clarity on that, or did you still have questions?
Well, I still have questions, and I'm going to have to go to see what those questions are. I don't remember right now at this second, so I'm going to get back to you. Or since I've been reading more deeper into, let me just leave it at that. Thank you for checking in with me, Travis.
Oh, no problem, no problem.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So Hanifa just asked a question in the chat. Let me pull that back up here. She says, are you saying death is an ascension, and if one fails to learn their lessons, they'll continue to reincarnate? So death is a bit of a tricky subject, because most of the people who've been there didn't come back. But we can surmise just from some of the texts that there is cause and effect, there is rhythm, right? And nothing happens without prior cause, and nothing done not have an effect. So actions that are done in this life, we can surmise have an effect on where we're going, and what we've done before has an effect on where we are now. That helps to answer your question in a practical way, I suppose. Or unless somebody else wants to chime in on that. From what it seems to me is that, so recently with my own personal shadow work, I had to tackle one of my fears, which was going back into the mushroom kingdom. Really, I haven't tripped like that in about 15 years. And I had quite a few bad trips, but I didn't realize that that really caused apprehension in me. And it's what prevented me.
I'm sorry, Travis, are you saying that you had a mushroom trip? I mean, like shroom trip?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't know if like you, anyway, go ahead. I didn't know if you were in the mushroom cream in a bad dream or something, or is he just like, wow, it's must have been a bad, or is he seeing shrooms? I'm sorry.
It's all good. Well, after many years of doing what I've been doing, I come to find that the reason for these bad trips was an imbalanced state of mind. I wasn't able to maintain my frame. I was swept away by what I was experiencing. Now, again, with a stronger mind frame, I was able to keep my composure, and I was able to guide myself to navigate where I wanted to go. So I went for answers based on what I'm studying currently. And really what I've seen is just more expansion on the same themes. And this is what you'll find in the occult. You come across the same subjects over and over and over again. A lot of people, they get disheartened by that. They think, oh, well, this is just the same shit. But it's like a fractal. You go deeper. You learn more about the same things. And what I saw that really stood out to me is that humanity in itself, it is still a garden of sorts. It's a circular garden that's contained. What's being grown here are souls, divine connections. And they are flourished through lifetimes of work towards achieving that goal of spirit. And, You know, just
Mhm.
some plants blossom and some don't. Some people develop their spirit and soul connection in advance. Most do not. So I think when it comes to death and reincarnation, I think that's a system of the soil just being mixed up and redistributed. In other words, one of the purposes of humanity is to, you know, perform the will of the higher realms. But one of the wills of the higher realms is to contain and develop what we call a soul. And certain soil, certain pieces of soil, certain gardens, certain humans are better at cultivating this seed than others. And has a lot to do with diet, physically, that we keep coming back so we are able to become vessels to contain such things. And when we do, then we're able to transcend up to the next level.
Can you hear me? This is Hanifa. Hi, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if my mic's even working. Oh, cool. Nice one. Yeah, I had a dream. Let me just share my dream. I had a dream the other day that that I was caught cheating. Not, I wasn't. I mean, I'm not cheating, but I was caught cheating in this dream, and that I lied. And then inside, in the dream, I was in this house, and it had many levels. So it had like stairs, and this guy had a gun and shot me and my friend in the third eye. So he shot us in our forehead. And then for a few seconds in the dream, we blacked out. And then after we came through, he told us that the bullets were blank, but next time they won't be blank. So we left the house, we escaped, and I ran into 4 policemen, and 3 of the policemen offered their assistance. And I warned them that, you know, oh, they've got a gun and whatever. But when I woke up from the dream, I felt like I was trapped. I was trapped here on in this dimension.
Yes.
That was it. So yeah, just this reincarnation thing, I guess, is just kind of a thing that I kind of think a lot about in terms of, you know, why we do the work, what are we ascending to, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
So
just wanted
it's
to share that.
to me, what I've gathered from what you said is that you may be receiving information that on the outside seems like it's changing, but you're finding that nothing. And it seems like you have come across recently some information that does seem like it actually has substance to it, but it seems like you're afraid to step forward into it because you kind of cause and effect. Because the house is, of course, the house is mind. The levels of the house represents the deeper layers. The gun and the man is masculine symbol. The gun is also sexual. The bullets, seed, and sperm. Your forehead, third eye center, being the entrance to your spirit. The man shooting you in the forehead, just being a blank, that would represent you coming across the information changing, but really wasn't. You coming across the policeman, who also represents the Mars energy, limiting and destructive energy. And that shows that you probably came across information recently.
Damn.
You feel
Travis,
is like,
we're losing you.
oh,
Can you please go back to the forehead and then, because I didn't hear past that.
I think somebody needs to mute their mic because it's interfering with when you're speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, would you say it sounds like something that might be
No,
what
it's
you're
not.
going through?
I think it's the brother Jason Kennedy. When the noise comes on, his image comes up. I'm not sure if he's aware of it.
Oh, sorry, y'all.
Okay. So what was the last thing you heard?
The bullets being sperm.
Yeah. So masculine energy, penetrative energy. Third eye being the mind and also the seat of spiritual development. The first gentleman that you came across, the first session of, I guess, teachings or studies seemed like they would have had an effect, but didn't contain any substance. They weren't transformative at all. But it seems like recently you've come across information or some type of subject matter that you have a deeper intrinsic feeling that is going to be transformative, but you have a reluctance and apprehension to move forward, mainly because you know it's going to change your life. And that would represent the cops and the destructive force of Mars. Because clearly cops do have guns that way. So it sounds like you might have, I guess you might be getting tired of searching for shit that doesn't really have any substance, but recently you may have come across something that you might be a little bit afraid of. Would that sound correct?
Wow, that's deep. Yeah, I would definitely say so. I mean, I found it hard to hear what you were saying half the time. So once this I think somebody else needs to, I think it's Leia that needs to mute her mic because there's a lot of sound coming through as well. But once this live goes on air, or you know what I mean, when you save it and you post it, I can re-listen to it. But yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, what the hell?
Oh my. I hope it didn't get disconnected. Here we go.
JL says in the YouTube chat that he took mushrooms twice and nothing happened. Well, that depends on a lot of things. Number one, it depends on what you expect to happen. That also depends on how much you actually took. I mean, you can look online easily and see that there's different dosage amounts for different levels of experience. I don't want to say. What you do find is that most people that say, "Yeah, I took shrooms before, it was fun," most people only take a sub, what do they call it, a sub transformative dose, I guess, where they get the body effects and the visuals and the feel good music, but they don't actually go into that zone, the higher levels. I mean, really what you're doing is you're piercing the veil of these four levels stacked on top of each other. So right now we're aware of the physical level. Above that is the astral level. When you do certain types of psychedelics, you absolutely move up into those other levels. You're able to perceive them. And it's not all fun and games, especially if your mindset isn't stabilized. If you're easily pushed to and fro based on your emotions. If you're not able to maintain your frame, I would suggest working on that first. That's more important no matter what level of reality you exist at. But I wouldn't say it's anything you need to rush and go out and do just because you heard about it or heard somebody else say it or whatever. It's not a recreational drug. It's not something that you do for fun and shits and giggles. It's a very educational thing, transformative and spiritual thing, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. And there's also the very viable and respectable route of microdosing, because these things do have long-term benefits on the mind, on the actual physical chemical structure of your brain. It helps with serotonin. It helps with depression. It helps with creativity. It helps with all types of things. And it's organic, right? It's not something that detracts from you like some other things.
Okay.
Brown Nature 9
Period.
asks Brother Travis what. It's kind of hard to say because at this point, man, they all blend into the same book, to tell you the truth. Infinity part goes into how deep you can go. But honestly, I would definitely recommend Mystical Kabbalah if you're interested in how the structure of energy and the structure of the universe operates. Initiation into Hermetics if you want to know how to use these things seriously, not just for parlor tricks. Of course, books like Basic Magic Basic Magic or The Magician help to give you a proper mindset for these things. But any of the books on my YouTube channel you'll find, I recommend because they've had an impact on me. I don't have any Amazon affiliate links. I don't get paid for promote none of this shit. The books that I mention are because they've been impactful to me. So if you see me talk about it, I mentioned it for a reason. Welcome aboard, Drunken Cat.
Mhm.
Deja vu.
Hi, it's me again. Brother Travis, I was just wondering if you could explain again. And I think there was another brother, I think it was Django that was talking about death. I'm back to death again. Why is death mentioned so much in a lot of readings and books and so on? Like in the book of the law, it speaks of death as if to say that we are only here to die. So then what is the point in life? I had a friend who committed suicide last Monday. Sorry, not last Monday, last Saturday, the same day that my granddaughter was born. So I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know really what my question is. Just can you explain again about why is death mentioned so much, and am I perceiving it all wrong? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty heavy. I can't even pretend to say that I know what that's like, but I'm sorry for your loss. As far as death being mentioned so much in the occult, mainly I think it's to point at the fact that death is the natural state. of existence. What we think is life is not actually life. These people aren't alive. They're, you know, just like an amoeba responding to being poked and prodded. You know, there's levels of consciousness, right? There's degrees, there's gradations. It's not like a flat this and then that and then that. It gradually dissipates into itself. But the thing is, life that is strictly material and physical isn't really life as we would think of it as, because this is temporary. This is temporary. And when we talk about death, death is the one place that all temporary things return to. Death is the state before manifesting into this temporary realm. And death is the state that will be returned to afterwards. This whole universe, even when you're looking at the Kabbalah, these four worlds, this Kabbalah tree, is a temporary manifestation out of the triple blackness of space, the nothingness, death. It's the original state. When all energy has finally ceased to move and vibrate, it's going back to that state of death. So I think the reason it's mentioned so much is to point to the fact that it is eternity, that it is the all. But also to bring us to the awareness that to really question what life is. A tree is alive. A tree is conscious, right? The dog is conscious. Germs are conscious. Our planet is conscious. But the degrees in between, they start to get really shady. Now, there's a level of consciousness that just reacts to stimulus. There's another level of consciousness that is able to contain purified thought. If you recall an initiation into Hermetics, it talks about distilling thoughts and concepts to its pure element. It talks about thought forms that live on the mental plane and on the astral plane. And the difference between them and us is that these things contain pure elements as opposed to complex combinations of elements. So when you're able to kind of really adjust yourself so you're not so strictly attuned to the five senses and you go within, you're able to contain some of these purified thoughts. But yeah, to answer your question, it's because death is the natural state of things.
Hey, Trav, I can just piggyback a little bit.
Yes.
I think when it comes to the occult, or you know, what's labeled the occult or the hidden or the arcane in those writings, as the sister Hanifa she asked, I think the subtle meanings of those type of statements, they're an analogy, death, dying, and thing. There, you are absolutely correct at what you said, but I just think it's also an analogy. When we say death, we say ego death. We're not something is not returning to a inanimate physical existence. It's just you're giving up the attachment to what is known or what has been animating the self or the activity within this psychobiological existence. So we reverberate particular perceptions and patterns that we want to return these things to where they come from. So the more that we study ourselves, we return back to the undifferentiated energy matter, which is basically the what you want to call the concealed world, or the hidden aspect of what we call a supreme being. So once we eliminate the things that we've accumulated to know, and we return back into the realm of unknowing, because death is an unknowing. So when we return back to a spiritual oneness, and then we go back, because that oneness is the omnipresence. So when we return back to a zero component, we're returning back to there is nothing to differentiate. There is nothing to compare or give a comparative of each thing. So the death is the elimination of the labeling, the elimination of the active, extinctive, impulsive energy that we've built up in the emotional, sensual, and passionate world of the lowest aspect of ourself, which is Malkuth. So once we return back into, or even as the Bible said, I think it was one of the guy Nicodemus or something asked Jesus, well, how does Jesus said to something about or where you have to die or you have to return into the womb to know the spirit. And this guy was, well, how do you return back into the womb? See, he only saw it as a physical womb, like you're gonna go back into your mother's belly. So, but he didn't catch the subtle meaning of this parable. So a lot of times when we speak in these, or the way the authors speak in these books, they're speaking in subtle alchemical occultic words that, and I'll use a quote from this book called Cultivating the Mind, where it says just to know your own mind, and you will grasp countless teachings and infinite subtle meanings without even seeking. So once you internally know yourself, you are getting back to the essence of yourself, which is the no self, or as they continue to say, your suchness, like in the Alice in Wonderland, when he told Alice that the little mouse kept saying, you've lost your muchness, meaning that she's lost the essence of who she is. So when we speak about death and dying, it's not as the sad occasion that the sister said, losing a physical friend to a suicide. We give away to the attachments of who we've become physically, so we can become the true spirit, or actually become the God self, or the Christos, or being reborn again.
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Melissa.
Okay. I think death is about consciousness and awareness, because I've had a near-death experience, and when I didn't have the physical form, the only thing I had was my awareness. I wasn't aware that I was dead, but I had an awareness. I didn't put together what happened to me till years later. I think when you're on Earth, it's like we're here to learn and kind of prepare ourselves for death, because there's a lot of spirits that get stuck on Earth because their consciousness, their awareness is stuck on the physical form, what they were doing, their jobs. They still leave with that same consciousness. So when you pass away, or when you're alive, you need to get over the fear of death, because I'm a nurse and I deal with patients that are so scared of death. Oh my God. So you need to not be afraid of death. Death is just consciousness, and when you're on the other side, it's beautiful. As long as your consciousness is on the level of peace, love, and light, and you let go of family, you let go of your physical aspect, and you just go. And when you're up there, you can then communicate with your family from a I have a little baby, I'm sorry guys, but from a different perspective, not a perspective of fear. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because we see death as fear, but it's, as a person that's I've transcended. And like I said, I regress that because I couldn't believe that you can even leave your body. It took me some years until I went on YouTube and a lot of research and found out I had what they call an NDE, a near-death experience. And one thing I did remember is because I wasn't sure where I was, I recall seeing what I thought was a line. And I was a child, so I was thinking, oh my God, this is a line. So I'm thinking with the mind of the human body. But when your consciousness, when you incarnate, you can come back as a tree, you can come back as anything. So I think death is just simply consciousness, awareness, and being in the physical form. Your job is to live your life, and it's like be in the world, but not of the world. You're gonna be here. You gotta get up, take a poop, eat, sleep, take care of your kids. But then always remember, that day will come and you're gonna transcend and go into the other side, and there's nothing to fear. It's glorious. It's beautiful. When I went, and you just have to just take the fear. The fear is just the illusion. The only aspect that is true is love, and that's a whole thing in itself. But as far as death, there's nothing to fear, and that's all I can say.
I got a question. I always thought that they kind of use words like death because they were kind of like hiding the secrets. So they kind of like the demon type deal. Like if they tell you demons are bad, then when you have the chance to get sigils and stuff like that, you would go against it because you already had that. I thought it was just for the mind to kind of like control who was going to mess with it and who wasn't.
Yeah, so look at what we've got going on here. We've got words, right? Death and demons. They don't mean anything, but we have an emotional reaction to these words because we've been conditioned all our lives. We've been told what they meant. And this is how the world works. We define reality based on the words that we've been given. We think in the words that we've been given. And he who controls the definition of these words controls what your reality looks like. I was talking with somebody last night and he was describing heaven. He was describing pearly gates. He was describing Morgan Freeman, and of course we talk about the bronze feet in the fire and hair like lamb's wool. But where do you get these descriptions from? You get them from someone else, right? Morgan Freeman as God. That literally comes from Hollywood. Pearly gates, right? That's not in the Bible. That's what someone gave us. So we paint our inner worlds based off of these words that we've been given and the feelings that we've attached to these words. Now, reality begins to change when you analyze these words, and even better, analyze these feelings that we have behind these words. Demons, death. When you analyze those words and start to come to the realization of your own definition, now we're doing some deep work.
Hey, Trav, got another question too, brother. This is in the mystical Kabbalah book. It's in Are we on chapter 11 or are we not doing that this week?
Hello?
Hello? Can't hear anything.
Hey. Okay, you said, are we on chapter 11?
Yeah, are we doing chapter 11 in the Mystical Kabbalah book, or is that next week?
Yeah, we're currently up to 11, and we're moving for this next 7 days. We're going to be working on the next few.
All right, okay, all right, so I can ask this. Okay.
I'm
All right, now I
uploading
just
the-
had a question about it's probably minute, but what it's in chapter 11, verse 13, and I just was having trouble with understanding what first principles will we look for, rather than pay attention to the tidy pattern of arrangement, which does violence to the correspondences. Would the
Okay.
first principles be the 4 principles that create Earth?
Yeah. Basically, she's saying we want to look at the foundational meanings, the foundational principles before we go to the complex combination of the foundational principles. Let me read that verse. These Sephiroth unquestionably have their correlations in the chakras of the Hindu system, but the correspondences are given differently by different authorities. As the method of classification is different, the West using a 4-fold system and the East a 7-fold system, correlation is not easy to obtain. And in my opinion, it is better to look for first principles rather than to obtain tidy patterns of arrangement, which does violence to the correspondences. Okay, so yeah, basically what she was talking about here is how different occultists, especially back then before it was more solidified like it is now, they would line up the chakras with the different spheres of the tree in different ways. The way that I line them up is just looking at it on the cover. You know, you got Kethra's crown, you got Chakma and Binah's third eye, you know, a cross like that for the 7. Where you have other cultists who say that, you know, Muladhara is Malkuth, Swadhisthana is Yasad, Manipura is Had, and they do it like that. But basically what she's saying is understand what the spheres mean. Understand the basics of this shit first before you go trying to force it into a pattern. Right? Because if you look online, you see a lot of people that attribute Pluto to Kether and you know, Venus to Chakma, Neptune to Venus. That's what she means by doing violence to the correspondences. That's somebody that just tried to fit it in there because they want it to make sense with what they already know. Some people seek to understand it in its original state, while other people seek to force it into their way of thinking. That's when you start making mistakes. And essentially that boils down to psychology. You got 2 types of people. Some people, they make generalizations and then they seek examples to verify those generalizations. Then you have other people who seek examples and then make generalizations out of those examples. In other words, someone who has assumption, go, for example, that's the kind of person who does violence to the correspondences. Because they're thinking, oh, well, since the Sephiroth line up with the planets, then clearly Pluto is Kether. Meaning that when it comes to first principles, Pluto wasn't even acknowledged back then. Neither was Uranus or Neptune. That's why they're not included. Someone who seeks examples first and then makes generalizations, they're the ones who are seeking first principles and then putting it all together after lots of research. So when you're approaching this occult, I always say it's best to have the mindset that you don't know shit. I keep that mindset because there's so much information. I cannot sit here and say I get it. I get enough to make the next step. But when we start assuming that we know it all, we start doing violence to the system because we try to force things to fit into our set belief. That's why you got people out here making all these crazy videos. Oh, you can't call king payment unless you got some yellow packages of saffron rice. And oh, you did it wrong, brother. You can't call Lilith. They're gonna do this to you. No. You get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, fucking up your mindset even more, adding more shit for you to think about and fucking create to scare yourself.
Right. Instead of learning what these teachers were saying, you just trying to make it fit to what you already think you know.
Right. Bueno.
I think Brown Nature 9 asked what was a good astrology book. I recommend this one here. You can easily find it on Amazon. It's called The Complete Book to Astrology. It's got all the basic stuff in here that you could find as far as different signs, different houses, what it means when this planet is in this house, what it means when you got this in your chart. It's a good basic book. It's by Llewellyn. I know somebody's going to ask, can you hold it up again? Here it is one more time. Complete Book of Astrology. It's from Llewellyn. It's modern, so it's easy to understand. The easy way to learn astrology. Yeah. All right. There's this one, and then there's another one that's like yellowish. And that's a little bit more complex, but check that out if you are concerned about how to read astrology. Which does tie into what we're doing. Of course, I'm sure you've seen the video that I posted about lining up the tarot cards with the astrological signs.
Travis. This
Five
is
Angels, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Travis, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The Kabbalah speaks a lot about the tarot cards, and I know I asked you earlier on Instagram about me getting tarot cards. I've always been intrigued with them, to see in movies and passing by the spiritual readers on the street that have their places for people to come in and get readings. Would it be helpful to work with and learn the tarot cards right now as I'm studying the mystical Kabbalah? Or is it something that you don't recommend? What do you think?
I'd say it would be helpful because it is a symbolic system as opposed to some written words. With it being a symbolic system, you'll be able to just observe and study the pictures and start to derive and correlate your own meaning as opposed to somebody telling you what it means. And if this mysticism and occult is something that you are taking seriously and will be in for the next couple of years, then absolutely I'd recommend going ahead and getting a set, because it's not going to stop popping up. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay. You had it. I'm sorry. You had on one of your links, you had something about, you had tarot cards and you had images on white index cards, and you're okay. I just wanted to is that something that you take a look into also? Because you were showing a way how to, what were you doing on it? I didn't get to take a look at it. That's why I'm so vague right now.
Okay. So that gets into seeing the connection between the cards and what we're doing right now with the Kabbalah. As Dion Fortune mentioned, Kabbalah, astrology, and tarot are not three separate systems. They're actually three aspects of the same system, right? So the video that I was doing was helping to line up correspondences with astrology and with tarot. For example, you'll see a card called Strength, and it involves a lion and a woman holding open the mouth of that lion. Now, on its own, that card has a meaning. It's called Strength. You know, it talks about an internal strength. And if you look symbolically, you've got a woman in a white dress holding open a lion's mouth, right? So if you meditate on that, you're starting to think, well, what can this mean? Maybe this means something about purity, something about the strength of innocence, right? Not brute masculine strength, but feminine strength. You know, so that's one way that you can start to decipher those tarot cards. Now, as far as astrology goes, we have a constellation that's represented by a lion. It's called Leo. Well, what do you know? That card of strength with the lion on it is the card that represents Leo. And if you want to take it to the Kabbalah, Leo corresponds with Tifereth on the Tree of Life. That is the center where the heart is, right? And if you look on the cover of Mystical Kabbalah, you'll see a cross in there because it also represents the Christ energy, the Messiah. He's called the Lion of Judah in the Bible. And when you speak of Christ and you think about the type of strength that the Messiah has, it isn't a brute conquering strength like Mars. It's a strength of innocence, of purity. So when you start to look at the connection between the three systems of Kabbalah, Tiferet, astrology, Leo, and the tarot, strength, you can put the pieces together as far as what you get a clearer picture of what that energy is talking about. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does.
Okay. And of course, you got like Virgo represents the hermit, right?
Okay.
Just all these different things. It's just different layers of symbolism, because a picture paints 1,000 words. A book can tell you what that card means, but your personal analysis of the symbol is going to give you a deeper meaning. And the more literature that you read about it, it's only going to add to clarify that deeper meaning. So all that I was doing in that video was helping to give convenient correspondence between astrology and tarot.
Okay.
That particular correspondence, I haven't really seen much anywhere else. And actually somebody here in the group, Tree Marie, she posted that from a book that she was reading, Chicken Kabbalah by La Milo Duquette. So yeah.
So what does the book, oh gosh, I just saved it. It was, I think, Tarot of the Kabbalah or Kabbalah of Tarot. I don't remember the name.
Kabbalistic tarot.
Right. Does that show you how to work with the tarot? I'm sorry, I didn't look into the book, so I'm asking you questions.
It's okay. It's cool. See, I'm a library of information, so I have a lot of info, but sometimes it's hard for me because I actually need people to ask me to get that shit out. So please ask all the questions you have. Kabbalistic Tarot, that book, it goes deep into the symbolism from the viewpoint of the Hermeticists, from the Hermetic Kabbalah, from the system that I'm actually teaching from. It goes deeper into what the tarot is about, the symbology of the cards and how it relates to the tree. It talks about them on a, it's a textbook, so it's on a more of a scholarly type of level, if you will.
Okay. Is there any deck that you suggest for me to start working with, or whatever I choose?
Yes, absolutely. Now, for someone who's just beginning and just starting out and hasn't had any experience with these cards yet, I would absolutely recommend the Unicorn Tarot deck.
Okay.
Actually, I'm just kidding. No, I wouldn't recommend that. That's a joke. What I would recommend is the Rider White deck.
Rider, okay.
Yeah, the Rider White Tarot deck is going to be excellent for a beginner because the symbolism holds very true to the Kabbalah.
Okay.
A lot of these other decks, some of them are just pretty pictures, but some of them are actually done by occultists, so they still remain true to the symbolism. But I'd get that deck first. I would recommend that one for you, absolutely. But if you're the type of person that likes to do something else just because it's in your rebellious nature, then I'd probably go with maybe the Thoth deck by Aleister Crowley, because he was also involved with the system of Hermetic Kabbalah.
Okay.
The Rider White, that classic deck, you cannot go wrong with that.
Hold that up again for me one more time, Travis, that deck. I'm sorry.
All right.
There we go.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that.
Okay, okay. Got it, thank you. And one more thing, the Sephira, it says, Dion Fortune says that you should meditate on the image. I've been on the internet to look for an image that I think that would be good for me to implant inside my consciousness, but I haven't found anything that's similar to what's on the book cover. So do you think or recommend just for me to look at the image that's on the book cover of the Mystical Kabbalah?
Absolutely. That's what I do.
Okay.
When I'm studying, I just have that book out and glance at it, especially if I'm reading about anything Kabbalah or Hermetic related. I've got the book on my desk so I can look at it and see it. You really want that image burned into your head. You really do.
Okay.
And I say that for multiple reasons, because the colors of the paths are accurate. There's little symbols inside the tree that give you an indication of what we're dealing with. Remember, I said in that Tiferet center, you've got the cross, right? That makes, that brings us to the image of Christ. You've also got a child and a man on a throne. And, you know, Christians, we like to talk about baby Jesus, or we talk about Christ coming back as a crowned and conquering king. It's both elements. And there's also the symbol of the hexagram of the, what do you call that thing? Hexagon, the 6-pointed star, basically.
Okay, right.
That's as above, so below. What that sphere actually represents is it's the center point of the tree. It represents the turning point from where the energy from above is transmuted into the energy below, and coming up, it's transmuted into the energy. It's the central point. It's the what do you call it? The conversion station. The reason that this sphere deals with the dying messiahs and all the dying entities, the sacrificed entities, is because that's the point where force is sacrificed and becomes form. That's the middle transition point. So that also represents Lucifer. That also represents Christ. That's how people say, oh, I heard that Lucifer and Christ were the same thing. Well, that's coming from how all these entities are actually symbols of how these energies are at play.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. All right.
Darren, he hit right on it, because I was going to ask about the paths. When she mentions to project the astral body along the path is necessary for many reasons to hold the degrees of initiation to which they correspond. Now, I actually bought the Mystical Kabbalah through the Apple Store on my iPad, but I don't have that. But the injustice of what I did to myself, I don't have that actual picture that's on the physical copy. So I'm missing all of that. So when I was reading this particular chapter, it was going through talking about the this basically was just speaking about the path, and it's speaking about the colors, and it was speaking about the different aspects that correlate to the path. So what she's speaking, now that you held that picture up, she's speaking about that on the front cover of that book, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So like I said, I bought it on my iPad and it does not. So I think I'm gonna have to try to find that picture on there, because I mean, I was racking my brain. I'm going through other Kabbalah books, but now I'm seeing all of these different trees. I'm like, man, what is she talking about? So,
Right, because I've been on the internet and I haven't seen anything identical to what Dion Fortune has on her book.
Yeah, so that's what it is. And even when she mentions if he is working with the 32nd path of Saturn, whose colors are all in the somber hues of indigo, dark blue, and black, he knows that something is amiss if a scarlet robed figure presents itself. Either that figure is elusive or he himself has wandered off the path. I didn't know where to go after that. I had to stop reading because I had nothing to match that with.
Yeah, Trev, do they get like, just like what my man talking about, is that getting into these guardians that that the office talking about in the emerald tablets? You know what I mean? Like, can you speak to that?
Well, to be honest, I don't remember about that part in the emerald tablets. Could you clarify a little bit more what he was saying there?
I was gonna say, because I remember in the book it says when Dion Fortune she says to talk about the astral body and the paths. She also speaks that one will be unknown to the guardians of the path, and they will be inimical rather than helpful, and do all in their power to turn the wanderer back. Secondly, if one should succeed in forcing one's way past the guardian, one still has no means of counter-checking the vision or knowing whether one is on or off the path, and there are plenty of beings in the lower sphere who are only too ready to take advantage of presumptuous ignorance. And that's coming, I believe that's chapter 12, I believe that chapter 10, talking about the paths. And I just read from the 18th verse. So really, if you know, really, it would really be helpful to me and maybe some other people. If you could really just go a little bit into the paths.
Okay. So essentially, as far as the chapters that we've been looking at so far, she touches on the past a little bit. She doesn't really get into working with them. But one way to think of it is that the spheres themselves are the capacitors. They store the energy, they generate the energy, but it's the paths themselves that the energy flows through. So in a way, the Sephiroth themselves are the powerhouses, but the paths are the process of that power transitioning from one state to another state. Now, when we look at the paths, the type of energy they represent is symbolized by the balancing of the two spheres that it connects. Let's see who it is. Oh, they removed themselves. But yeah, as far as the paths go, one way to look at them is that they are the balancing of the two Sephiroth that they connect. Each path is associated with a particular visualization, color. There's even an entity that presides over each path. Now, just working with these paths doesn't mean that you're naturally going to encounter these entities, but what can be said is if you're not ready to cross that path, there will be something that manifests that will balance your energy so that you don't get past it. It will be better to think of these things not so much in like a warfare type of perspective, like we're going up against different demons and entities and things. It's all about balancing energy. If your consciousness, if your current state isn't focused, concentrated, and potent enough to cross a certain threshold, it's going to keep you there. So when working with these paths, if you're not able to really go through a certain level of that path, because there's 4 octaves of each one of these spheres and paths, if your energy isn't able to penetrate that, whatever form that the force will have to take will manifest to keep you where you are until you are able to penetrate that. But yeah, long story short, the paths are just the connections between the two spheres and the balancing of the energy of those two spheres.
Okay, thank you.
And of course, we'll get deeper into that into the book.
Appreciate that.
Fred, I was making a relation to the Emerald Tablets of Thoth because it sounded similar to something that I thought I saw in the 8th tablet. I used to kind of like read it all the time, but I'm looking for it now, so I didn't want to, because I know you kind of was wondering what I was talking about, but I'm gonna look for it and see if I can make the correlation and ask you the question properly.
All right. Yeah, it's probably been about a good 10 years since I even picked that book up. I remember the Hounds of Tendalos and the screeching sound, and Nazir Rod doing some video about that.
Now, Travis, if we wanted to go a little bit deeper into those paths and to identify, as the unfortunate mentions, these particular guardians, is that going to be, because I didn't, of course I'm following, I'm not reading ahead in the book, I'm just going along with where we're at. Is she going to speak into that further into the book, or is there more material that you can give, that if a person wants to really get into what she's saying about each particular path?
Yes, there is, I think, a series of 2 books on Kabbalistic path working that are made. I don't remember the authors' names, but they do come from the Hermetic tradition. But she does, the unfortunate does speak on the paths in the book version. I know the PDF version, she doesn't have that bonus chapter, and I'm not sure about the audiobook version. You'll have to check. But as far as the physical copy, at the very end, there's a part 4, which is editorial update, and chapter 27, subjective path. I don't think the PDF has those two. The audiobook. But yeah, there is a little bit of information out there on the paths, not too much that I've seen, but I know there's a series of like 2 books written by I think the last name is Cicero. It's a husband and wife. And what was the other thing? Pathworking.
Cicero.
I think so. I think that's their name. It's a husband and wife duo, and they did like some guided meditation through the paths.
And say the chapter in the book, the physical copy of the book has what did you?
The physical copy should have chapter 27, which is subjective path workings, and there should be a part 4 called editorial update, where she goes directly into the paths.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, she even talks about the paths that lead to Doth. So yeah, she goes into them. But and this of course kind of points to the tunnels of Set, but not quite. The tunnels of Set are actually the paths on the clip-off, and those have well explored entities that reside on each one of those paths. If any of you purchased the Kabbalistic Encyclopedia, whenever I recommended it a year or 2 ago, that also points out all the different entities on the paths. But that's not really mandatory or anything. That's just extra stuff. We didn't get the book out yet. I think we will though. But let's cover the creek first. Okay, I'm gonna go check the chat just real quick to see if anybody needs any questions answered from there. What's up with that? Y'all cowards don't even smoke crack. Anybody ever heard that song before?
I
Yeah,
haven't.
my
I
man put
haven't
me
heard
on to
that.
that joint.
What do you say?
I said, yeah, my friend put me on to that joint, to that guy, the rapper Viper.
Yeah, man.
And
I
then
love
John talk about saying, he was like, these niggas want to kill me because my hops. I was like, yeah, it be like that. See the J in the nigga face, he want to fight now.
He has some hilarious lines.
Yeah, them songs are comedy.
Extreme. And the fact that it went viral at some point.
3.1 million views. Say that.
I love it.
He's patient. He waited for that day.
Yeah, man.
Oh my goodness. I post something, I'll be ready to take it down in an hour.
Greetings, Grace, in the chat. Happy birthday. Happy belated birthday. Happy birthday to all the cancers we got in the chat today. It's cancer season, unfortunately.
Thank you. It's tomorrow.
Okay, all right. Happy early birthday. Do something nice
Thanks.
for yourself.
I will.
Can you be at the base a minute? Is that
Oh, the baby. Global K asks, best book that cuts straight to the point. There are many, but I think I need you to verify or clarify what subject you're referring to. Hey, Bunny Queen, look into the chat and look at your symbol. Oh, clearly you see it already.
Hmm.
Okay, but yeah, usually in this occult stuff, there's you know, so many different subjects, so many different directions to go. But you're not going to go wrong. You're not going to hurt yourself if you pick up a tarot deck, the Rider White, at least, which is astrology, like the one that I mentioned, and you keep taking a look at this mystical Kabbalah. If you can understand these two things together, all the rest of the occult, as far as symbol-wise, will start to fall together, start to gel together and mix together. Because, like she says, they all come from the same source. Kabbalah, tarot, astrology. Of course, it'll take some time to master, but you can start that process today by just learning the symbols, right? If you don't know the astrological symbols by heart, that's easy. Just go ahead and, you know, go online, draw them yourself. I recommend doing everything by hand and look at the patterns that happen between these signs. You got 12 signs that break up into 4, 3, or 3 groups of 4, right? 4 elements. If you look, it goes around in a wheel. Here, let me turn my camera on so you can see. But yeah, it goes around in a wheel. You got fire sign, earth sign, air sign, water sign. Fire sign, earth sign, air sign, water sign. Fire sign, earth, air sign, water sign. Check out the, you know what I'm saying, draw them in a row of 4 across and get to know what is what. I didn't memorize the date, but the more that I studied them, the more that just kind of fell into place. But memorize what the symbols are and then what the element is attached to those symbols. Now, what I would do after you get if you can clearly close your eyes and see the symbols, try to memorize them in order, right? Because like I said, they go in order: fire, earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water. One of the best ways to memorize them in order is to align them with the body, because these signs also correlate to body parts in order, starting with the head and ending with the feet. So Aries is the head, Taurus is the neck, Gemini is the arms and lung, Cancer is the breastplate, the heart, which is Leo. Then you've got the intestines, which is Virgo, the kidneys, right, the 2 balancing scales, the sex organs, which is Scorpio, the legs, the thighs, that's Sagittarius, the knee caps for Capricorn, the leg, the calves, Aquarius, and then the feet, Pisces. Memorize that along your own body, right? That's the next level of memorizing them. After doing that, a good way is to remember which ones are the fixed signs, which ones are the mutable signs, which ones are the cardinal signs. And all this stuff is you can easily look up on the internet. This is like public knowledge. But one of the reasons that when you start to memorize these and see the patterns, you'll start to see the stuff start popping up. Religion, right? If you look in the Bible, it talks about the four creatures, the four living creatures. One of them had the head of a bull, one had the head of a lion, one had the head of an eagle, which is Scorpio, and one had the head of a man, which is Aquarius. Those are the four fixed signs. Those are the four corners of the earth, right? Now you're starting to see how it will cross over to different occult studies. They're represented by a class of angels called the Hayoth. Years ago. But studying the symbols, just getting the symbols in place, you don't have to be a master or an expert or be able to do this, that, and the third. Just learn the symbols. That's going to go very far. Building your internal library.
Travis, I have a question.
Yes.
Hamites use animals in a lot of their like the falcon, the horse, and Osiris. Why do they use animals like the Sphinx, the lion's head or the lion's body and the human head? You understand what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes. And this is all symbolic. The reason, so this goes to the reason why I'm saying learn the symbols instead of worrying about being an expert, because the language of the occult is symbols, because the language of the subconscious mind is symbols. So whenever the ancients depict animals or an animal, that's usually talking about the animal characteristics or animal qualities of man. And it's also pointing to something astrological. The reason that these astrological signs sometimes have dual elements, either of twins or animals that have animal, have human, because it relates to the function in physical man and its correlation to an animal. I guess like the Sphinx, for example, some say that it represents the time period that it was built in, because currently we're in the age of Aquarius. But others talk about how it also represents the balancing of those four elements, because Leo also represents fire element. And then of course we've got the wings, which would be the air element. And I know at least in Assyria and Babylon and areas like that, they had the animal that was the divine force, the lion body, the bull aspect, the Taurus, the eagle, and also the man's head. Because Scorpio used to actually be an eagle before it was a scorpion. Yeah, somebody asked in the chat, I'm still wondering why Aquarius is an air sign and not a water sign. Aquarius is a man pouring out water, and Scorpio was an eagle. That's kind of strange, huh? But yeah, does that help to shed light on the question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. Chango, did you have something to say about that?
No, sir.
Trav, I was going to just ask another question, insignificant, but I like when you told us the other day to, spread our cards out and, because we were making a relation to wands and absolute and cups and bria. It was good to see it like that because it really broke that down, those terms that they use in the Kabbalah as far as absolute, bria, yesaraya, and Asaya. You know what I mean? I can relate them to tarot and I can relate them to the four elements and to the tetragrammaton, you know what I mean, as far as the Yohe Bahe. It was good to see that all spread out, you know what I mean? And then when I got down to really seeing it, you could see it from top to bottom. It's the archetypal world, it's the world of creation, the world of formation of angels, and the world of action, the world of matter. It was good to see that broken down. It went into the aces equal into Kether and the twos equivalents of wisdom or chakra. I even like the note that it brought out talking about Levna, because I had never heard of that. But when I looked it up, it was talking about some ritual that the Jews did, blessing the moon.
Yeah.
That was I like how that
Lebanon?
made me highlight that stuff. But I was gonna ask, is Asaya related to Messiah in any type of way? You know what I mean? I didn't do the research, but I wonder if you just, was it related?
At least from what I've seen, I don't think that Asaya is related to Messiah. I think it just kind of has some of the same words. But yeah, lining up the cards that way, stacking them up as far as those four worlds, it helps to give us a clear visual again of how the energy flows. Like you said, with the Yod He Vav He, the Tetragrammaton, the formula for manifestation. If for those of you who've been following my channel for a few months, we've been hearing this Yod He Vav He Tetragrammaton name, and seeing the cards laid out. When you do that yourself, if you have the space, you know what I'm saying, go ahead and stack them on top of each other. But even laying them out, left to right, it gives me a good visual of imagining that energy coming down from, the unmanifest into the Kether of Atziluth and zigzagging down all the way through the four worlds to Malkuth of Asaya. That's a long way for the energy to go. So sometimes when people are like, oh, well, I did this ritual and my magic's taken forever, it didn't manifest. You really got to understand the process it has to go through, right? It has to follow that long path. Now, you're dealing with four levels of your consciousness, of your existence, from it going from the unmanifest world of thought to the manifest world of the physical. It's taking a long path. So this is why it really behooves you to line up correspondences to help that electricity flow down smoother, right? The more blockages you have, the less likely it's going to manifest. But you want to do everything you can on this come through. You want to do everything you can on the plane to allow that energy to come through. You want to do everything you can in the mental plane, that energy to flow through as smoothly as possible. So to me, when I see it laid out like that, it helps to clarify so many things. This is why it's good to eat healthy. A lot of people are like, oh, if we're doing spiritual stuff, should we become vegan? Is that important? Is it important to give up meat? I don't think any one specific rule over the other. First principle, the concept of purifying your body and treating it as a temple, because really it's a temple. It's the place that you're divine, and doing the work to help to purify that temple, to align it with spirit. The more that you're able to do that, the easier that energy is able to flow. Was that able to come out clear, or was there appearance?
I think Ant got his mic still on, and some of you, when you were speaking, it was kind of being glitched out a little bit.
Okay. But yeah, just working with these four worlds, it's best to just kind of keep in mind that the path of the energy flowing, it has to travel a great distance. But we can facilitate that easier if we do our part. It's just like that painting that we were having a good laugh off of last week. If we can do our part to just extend our finger a little bit more, the finger of God can come down and touch us a little bit better. But that's where things like eating right comes from. That's where things like the feng shui and aligning your home and lining up all these different correspondences. This is why it works. It's almost like a magnet. If the etheric patterns line up on all four planes, that just makes it so that the manifestation is so much, just like lightning. When the conditions are right above and below, it makes a clear passage for that strike to come down.
I like what y'all talking about the body too, you know what I mean? Because I think even shedding light and consciousness on that is some of the first and like rudimentary steps of doing magic in itself, because there are things that you don't witness and you can't see. And it truly is as above, so below. You're using correspondence and you're using that law right there with that, because on the outside, you can see your body slipping. And if you take note to the things that you're putting in and what systems that is helping or assisting inside of your body to help absorb certain things, then you make a connection with that and you're able to change the output on your physical body, you know what I mean, on the outside, you know what I mean? And I think Veronica was speaking of that a couple of Sundays ago. I missed it, but I heard it later on in the week and I wanted to speak on it. But yeah, that's some of the first magic that you're doing. So it is very important to take note of what's going into your body. And it's not necessarily you got to be vegan, because I was making a note that there's a book out that is called Eat Right for Your Blood Type. And old people should eat meat. People shouldn't eat too much meat, because, it gets down to lectins and things, certain foods agreeing with the bacteria you have in your body, essentially, for you to, be able to break down foods in your stomach acid. So, like, we're talking enzymes here. There are some people like Frank Young that speaks of the endocrine system being the God system and us controlling those things. And for you to have good control of that, you got to have the good foods that you're bringing into your body so that it can react the way it does. Those T3s can make T4s in your body, and you can produce any, with your proteins, you can produce any response that you want in your mind and in your body. But it starts with having consciousness of that.
Yes.
Can I say something? So, speaking of this nutrition part, I don't know if you guys are aware, but there's some people that are in this present existence that already have all their energies aligned and they are crystallized and they're living amongst us. And there's a particular one that I follow. Unfortunately, for some of us in this group, she only communicates in French. I can give you the link to her YouTube. It's been a huge epiphany for me this week. But one thing about it is she was giving a lecture on this nutrition thing we're talking about. And basically she was letting us know, not just about the vegetarian aspect, but most importantly, portion. Because most times what we eat, depending on the components, it weighs us down. Almost instantly after eating, you feel like you need to relax. And she was talking about how the human body is generally not meant to be in motion, because when you're in motion, it's not meant to be asleep, because when you're asleep, then you're semi-dead, and then you're not putting any of your energies into work. So it was just to clear the aspect that not only about being a vegetarian, but or whatever kind of diet you choose, but mostly about portion. It's about having less in your body system so that you could be active at all times. Say maybe you have a large breakfast and then you can have just like an orange for lunch, or maybe an apple and like a protein bar or something. And then at night you can have like a salad. It shouldn't be so hard. I just thought I should put that out there. But otherwise, if anybody is interested in this information about this lady, who is basically, she has basically made me realize we are all on the right path. Every single thing, this is just we practicing the theory, because she's actually living it. So every single thing, the Kabbalah, whatever, anything, the Hermetics, everything is real. It is in correlation to how the universe works. She's here, and I saw her perform miracles. I saw everything when it comes to all what we talk about, when it comes to all the Kemetic religion and the pharaohs and even down to Christ.
Mhm.
She did this video on. I wanted to talk to Travis about it, but last week was kind of sorta. So she did this video on YouTube. I hope it's still there. I will put everything in the majors group on Facebook. You guys can look through, but there was a point in time she brought out a crystal from a jar because she was doing a live video, and she showed on her hand, on her palm. I saw it with my clear 2 eyes. I saw statues come up. Everything connected to Akhenaten. Everything connected to so many things. It was just like, it was overwhelming. I'm still flabbergasted to this point. So it really affirmed for me like the path on which I am on. She spoke a lot of things about like the whole the aquamarine world, how the world, how existence is, how the matrix functions, how we ourselves are living matrix. So what I'm saying is what I gathered, the information I gathered from her page, everything including the Mahat. If you know me in this group, you know that I'm gathering information. I'm new into this group, so it's like a lot of information I was gathering here and there was to really fine tune and to let me have overcome entirely my self-doubt of if anything was maybe not the path. Trust and believe. This is the path. This is the path. There's proof. There's the proof in the pudding. I've seen it with my eyes.
Yes. Yeah.
So I would post her on the majors group, but let me write the name out here somewhere in the chat so someone can just look her up on YouTube. I believe as spirits, when you know you're in the right environment, you recognize real. You recognize straight up. So you guys just take a look at her and you tell me what you think.
Right on.
Hey, Trey.
Yes.
Hey, while I got you on the initiation into hermetics on basically like page 75, 76, 77, but 77, it does talk about the conscious eating and the water, but the water specifically. So is it saying don't even try to do that stuff with the warmer water over like the hotter water, like 97 degrees or 99 degrees Fahrenheit?
So you can do it with the water. It's just that the more cold it is, the more receptive it is to your intent, right?
Okay.
Because when we think about cold, when we think about water and cold and lower temperatures, that deals with the magnetic nature, right? Because one of the qualities of the water element is cold and contraction, and it pulls in. So it's easy to absorb your intent, pull it in and impregnate it, as the book says. The more warm the water gets, it's actually closer to the fire element. So it's not going to absorb your intent as well because it's now projecting instead of attracting. You feel me?
Yeah. It used words like neutralize, so it scared me like, you know what I mean? Is it even worth the time with it? Or like, you know what I mean? Something is better than nothing.
Something is better than nothing, basically. Because you got to think, then in the next chapter, he goes into talking about food, right? And impregnating your food. Clearly, to cook your food, it's going to be hot. So it's not so much of it's more just explaining the science behind it, because we're talking about water itself and it's in its purest form.
Right.
Earth, food will classify more as the earth and it containing all the different elements in it. When we're talking about strictly the element of water and the physical manifestation of that element, it's better to stay truer to purpose with what it does.
Okay.
Okay, I got a question.
Yes.
Or a comment, I should say. The gentleman before was saying that, I think he said, the lady that he was introducing also supports the endocrine system. Okay, then it just hit me that the hot and cold showers are directly associated and help the endocrine system and the lymph system. Do you see what I'm saying? The connection? I don't know if anybody catches that, but it stimulates more blood flow when you to these glands, when the and puts these glands in ultra power. So when you're in a cold shower, okay, and then when you switch off and put a hot shower, bam. I've been doing this a lot anyway, but I never thought of the spiritual connection, how that makes so much sense. And the endocrine system is extremely important because the Egyptians used to preserve the kidneys, the adrenal glands, all of the whole endocrine system, and put them in separate vessels. So there's another connection right there. How it's very important to make that connection and that that romance and that I didn't mean to say romance, but that's probably apropos in some odd way. But yeah, just basically that relationship is what I was reaching for with the endocrine system. What do you guys think about that?
Hey, but real quick though, like yeah, that was me. But
Okay.
there's a book, Frank Young. Like Frank Young was really good. He had this exercise where you put your hands in water, and you would do training on you. Like you would do training on that. You know what I mean? Like you would be trying to tell your hand, even though it's in cold water, that this is hot. This is hot, and you know what I mean. As you would build upon it, it would just like it would get easier, and you could control it. You know what I'm saying? And essentially, that is they gave you training for controlling your endocrine system.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Interesting, because we're not even really taught that that's something that would even be possible, but it starts with even the idea that such a thing would be possible for us to even look further into it. And that kind of relates to the very first question you asked, Sophia, about the magnetic and electric parts of the human body. To even just be aware of such a thing.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there you go.
Bam.
There we go.
Oh, a chill just came over me.
Well, I kind of have that effect on women.
I'm sure it's you too. Oh, wow. Okay. This is good.
That's a very wonderful observation. That's really damn cool. I'm gonna pretend like I already knew that. You just introduced that to me, so that gives me something to look into now.
Okay.
And that's the beautiful thing about having this type of setup here with this group, because all of us have different backgrounds. And when we have these discussions, these things start popping up and give us different directions to look into. So yeah, that was an awesome observation right there. And I'm thinking about the 4 elements and the 4 blood types, the A, the B, the O. I don't quite know which would be which. O would probably be earth. A would probably be fire, I guess. I don't know. But that'd be something to look into.
I'll research that.
Ooh-wee. Has anybody in the group or the chat heard of Ormus? Has anybody experimented with Ormus?
Would you spell that, please?
Give me your O. You got your O. You got your O. Give me your R. You got your R. You got your R. M-U-S. Ormus.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So the gold,
Yes.
okay. Yeah, I do have a couple of bottles of drops of that.
Let it rain, clear it out. Hey,
Atomic Ormus, okay.
You can ring my bell. Ring my bell. My bell. Ring a ring a ring. Just asking. I don't want to talk too much about it because whenever I mention something that's purchasable on Amazon, the price seems to double or triple. And I don't want that to happen to my precious monoatomic gold. It's what us Anunnaki use to get into contact with our spaceships.
Okay,
We won't talk about that just yet.
I'm taking it. I've forgotten I even had it.
can't even tell the difference.
Yeah.
Just to say something about the shadow work, that once you do a lot of shadow work or do like some shadow work, you start to realize that you might have a lot of positive qualities about yourself that you've kind of just put into your shadow. And once you just start in shadow work, you start seeing that you have maybe these other talents that you never really explored just because they were hidden in your shadow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Because a lot of times we just think that the shadow work is just the negative stuff, but everything has a balance. And even sometimes some of the things that we classify as negative really isn't that bad. You know, it's us being conditioned into thinking that it's a negative quality. KP, what's going on, my man?
It was good. It was good. How you doing, Chad? How you doing, everybody else?
Very well, thank you. How you coming along with these books?
Taking my time with it. I'm just hearing out y'all point of view, and then I go back and then listen and get my own little twist when I go back. Cause I think I'm a little behind. I'm trying to really soak it in. But yeah, just listening so when I get up there, I got a nice little idea.
I get you.
I don't know if you noticed that when you're reading when you're reading Dion and then you're reading Barden, Did you do this on purpose? Did you kind of get the female perspective and the male perspective? Because Dion, she writes very feminine, you know, very, and I've had to break out my dictionary a couple of times and get some old English, or actual English, oh, is that what that means, And where I find that Barden's a little bit more, a lot more straight to the point. Did you do that on purpose, or it's just spirit guiding you?
Me? No, I'm not that
Get out of
brilliant. I'm not that brilliant.
here.
I'm gonna give that all to spirit right there.
All right.
Travis, this is Duran. I'd like to go back. You all mentioned the indoctrination system in the Mystical Kabbalah, chapter 11, section 4. I remember reading this. I have it highlighted. The latest advances in physiology are pointing to the conclusion that the link between mind and matter is to be sought primarily in the endocrine system of ductless glands and only secondarily in the brain and central nervous system. And I thought that was interesting that you all had brought that up today.
Yeah.
Hey.
So these systems are typically automatic, but who would have even conceived that they could be put under conscious control? Now, as Jason stated, Frank Rudolph Jung hints towards that and even outright claims that this can be done. And if you look deeper into some of these Indian mystics and yogis, they also claim and state that it can be done. So just imagine what life is like when you're in full control of how your body regulates itself. If that's possible, then what the hell else is possible? There's stories as for in the Orient that talks about people holding their breath for an extremely long amount of time. As Kenna put once, they're breathing in and holding the oxygen in different organs other than the lungs. You got people handling fire and moving lighter than air and that type of thing. Stretching the limits and the possibilities of the physical realm. But it all starts with being aware that such a thing is possible.
But I think that's I think if we connect our consciousness to nature, we could obtain the same type of secrets that nature has. When, like a frog, when they go into hibernation or certain type of things like that, if we was to connect our consciousness to that, we could do the same thing. So I think when we see these aesthetic yogins, like you said, hold their breath for these long periods of time, once we look at what animals or insects or reptiles do in nature, which we have a same connective consciousness through them, through our reticular brain or our reptilian brain consciousness, and we could do the same thing as them. And basically how important it is with our diet. Our dietary habits is what keeps us from actually connecting with those type of phenomena, because we already are in a dense state of existence. So if we're eating heavily toxic food, we're just putting density on top of density. Because even some of these aesthetic yogins, they can go for long periods of time without even eating or even drinking water, because they've placed their, I don't want to say place, but they've matched physical consciousness with supreme consciousness, which basically in a term trying to verbalize it, they've become the essence of consciousness, which doesn't need anything to exist.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what what's happening. But it would take us because we're so westernized, even in our reading this information, and we're striving and we're shadow working. Look at what we have to do. We have to shadow work. We have to we have to write it down. We have to read it in a book. Ancient aesthetics did not have to read these things in books. They connected their consciousness with the Akashic consciousness and got this information passed down through them from ancient vibrations, and then they begin to put it into practice. So we have, for lack of a better term, we've fallen so far from grace, even though we're fighting our way back to the higher realms. It's just that in this Western society, we have to fight so hard to get back to that pure essence of, like I said, it's hard to verbalize or give terms so we can understand it. Like the whole death thing earlier, we could have went on with that for 15 days straight about death, because we try to verbalize it so our brain, not our mind, can understand. So we could intellectualize or cognize these type of things. So it all fits in that we could do these great things with breathing and underwater. And like I watch these guys in the Greek islands, how they could dive underwater. I'm talking about they go so deep looking for sponges and clams and all kind of things, and how they can hold their breath for like 8-9 minutes under the water, and learn how to control their blood flow so that when they come back up, they don't catch the bends in their bloodstream and die. So anything is possible. We just have to correlate all the actual elements. And I think that's what we're trying to do, so we could live a magical lifestyle. These are the things that we call magic. If a person sits in front of you and holds their breath for 15 minutes, you're definitely going to say, this guy knows magic. If I get up out of this chair and float around the room, you're going to say magic. But no one knows that I might have fasted for 30 days. I might have fasted for 40 days. I might have said a done or Yad Heve a particular amount of times and vibrated this energy and actually became the energy. So I separated my etheric self from my densified physical self. So it's just, we're just fighting so hard to get back to where we at. And I think that's that kind of a person who was as these books call an initiate or a neophyte. That's where the discouragement comes in, because you want it so bad. You have the capabilities to obtain it, but you're so physical, and we are frail, and we're worried, and we don't want to be worried, and you know what I mean? We need coffee to stay up at night and all kind of type of things. So it's just a big fight to reach that ancient ways, and I think that we gotta, like these groups are for encouragement, and that's the whole Kether, or the Asarian sphere, is about the unity of one. That by us collectively being together as individuals, what we're actually doing is we're reunifying ourselves as a collective consciousness of one, so we can return back to the binary of zero, which is all things. So we could all have the same experience at the same time,
Well, the Aborigines in Australia, they got that magic down too. They can lower their blood temperature. We need to have a coat on. They just lower their blood pressure, and they could just go out butt naked in the cold and be fine.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they're so connected to Earth, and years they've been persecuted because, and yet that culture needs to be left alone, because that's who we were, ancient in the ancient times, and they're trying to beat it out of them, and
Yeah.
it needs to be left alone.
And just think about how you said that the indigenous Aboriginal people, they don't have to clothe themselves with any secondary thing to hide their shame, you know, or what's been termed in the West, your shame, because you're naked. You should be ashamed of yourself for being like that. They don't even need to spray off. I mean, we're spraying off on ourselves from mosquitoes. We're putting on lotion and cologne, and everything that we do is to mask our natural self, where we continuously add on additives so we could quote unquote be basically an artificial form of ourselves. We are genetically modified. You know, we have, you know, it's just like if you think about the process of what was called slavery. Once you take a particular individual from one geographical area, and through the process of breeding and interbreeding between people, you genetically modify the originalness of a people. So they become a whole nother type of person. It's no different than horses or dogs and stuff like that. So, you know,
Exactly.
we have, you know, and I just go back to what I said. Us together collectively, we are fighting to return back to the essence of who we are. We know that what we've become is not the who we are. So we're just trying to get back to the indigenous, or get back to the natural way of life. You know, just my last thing, when everybody was speaking about the tarot cards, I was gifted some years ago the Aleister Crowley Thoth deck. I would definitely recommend everybody go with the weight, what's the other deck that you held up, Travis?
The Rider-Waite.
The Rider-Waite deck, because that Thoth deck, you got to be prepared for that thing. That thing, first of all, it came with such a heavy energy. When it arrived and I opened up the pack, I actually felt the energy. It was almost like I got sick. So it was something. Yes. So I actually felt the energy of this deck, and once I utilize this deck, because I'm slowly learning it, it will reveal so much because it's so complex, and it has all the Hebrew letters on it. It has this it's just a highly complex deck. So
it's blunt.
Yeah, it really is. You know, so I just wanted us to end with that. Say that definitely stick with that the Rider-Waite deck, which I'm actually gonna have to purchase myself that deck, because I see that's what's being really referenced in the material that we're reading.
Yeah, and if you get that Kabbalistic Tarot book that you brought up earlier, they actually use, for example, the Rider-Waite, the Thoth deck, the Marcellus deck, and another one that I haven't really seen. I've got the Marcellus deck. That was my first deck that was given to me. I would not recommend that one at all. But yeah, I like what you said also about how those yogis, you know, they don't eat the food or the water. They're just connected entirely with this oneness. And this relates to what I was saying earlier about how we've got reality stacked on top of reality. There's a physical world, but overlaying that physical, there's an astral, energetic, etheric world. And overlaying that is a mental and then a spiritual. The more that you're able to purify your focus, the more you can tap into those higher realms. Now, the food that we eat also has etheric, astral energy about it. And when we consume it, we're consuming that etheric energy, and we're also using the physical substance to build our bodies. But primarily, we are sustained by that etheric energy. Now, what we're learning here in initiation hermetics is we're impregnating the water and the food with etheric energy of our designation, right? We're attuning our consciousness and our focus into the akasha of the food or the water, and we're focusing on the qualities and concepts of wellness, of peace, of balance, right, of abundance, and those positive things, and we consume that etheric energy through the vehicle of the food. The food is becoming a form to carry the force that we impregnate it with. Now, where does this lead to? Hopefully, if you're able to kind of ride along here, we're learning that it's going to come a point where you don't need a vehicle to get a hold of that force, right? These yogis and these monks and whatnot, they don't have to impregnate food to eat it. They just pull the ether straight from the ether into their etheric body. That's just something to be aware of here. We're learning here by tuning into basically praying over this food, blessing this food, adding intent to it. Hopefully what you're learning here as you do this daily is there will come a time where you don't need the food. You can just draw that energy into yourself. And that's what you're supposed to be doing when you're fasting.
Good stuff, Travis. Thank you.
Trav, do you like the Golden Dawn deck?
I haven't really seen it, but that's the fourth deck that is talked about in that Kabbalistic tarot book. So yeah, the Golden Dawn deck, the Thoth deck, the Rider-Waite deck, and the Marcellus deck. But yeah, that's what I meant to say earlier. I recommend the Rider-Waite, but if you're a rebel and you don't like being told what to do, then go ahead and get that Hermetic Golden Dawn deck. Aquarius people.
Trav, is that do you know a cheaper place where that Kabbalistic tarot is? A little bit under $77.
Oh, damn, the price done jumped. See, this is why I can't be talking about books no more, man. When I bought it, it was $30. Then I looked again, a month later, it was like 20 something. And now you're telling me it's in the 70s? This is outrageous.
Yeah.
Look, I'm gonna have to just start posting books, and I don't know. I'm gonna have to just do a secret email list for these books, man. I'm telling you, every time I talk about a book, the price jumps up. Like, that sucks.
Travis, I have
That also tells you the value of information that's in that book. So just get your change and buy that book, brother.
Yeah, Trev, I ain't gonna lie. I witnessed that with the Franz Barden book because it took a while to get to me, and it was like a month later. But when you started talking about the club, it was crazy. You'll go in there, it'd be like 27 of them, then it started dropping, then it got down to like single digits. Then it just went out of just copy, and he was gonna get some more at a date, and it just jumped up to like $60 something.
Yeah.
My man
Yeah.
saying it.
I had to go through an out of print resource to get mine, and I'm still waiting for it.
I guess I should be more strategic about how I do this next time.
Nah, yeah, good. That book's still $26.
And Panic on his most recent lecture, he spent a good portion talking about Kabbalah this time. Like, he doesn't normally spend a lot of time on Kabbalah. He was kind of messing a lot of things up now that I'm studying it, but it's like, interesting.
Nice. Interesting. I like it. Yeah, there are some books that I don't mention for multiple reasons. That would be one of them. Because I know some people just buy them just because they heard me say it. I prefer people to buy the books and actually use them. But, some people do. But, at the end of the day, everything works out the way it's supposed to. Those who do get these books, sometimes it's not even for them. Sometimes it's for someone else. Sometimes it's for their kids or their cousins or someone who walks into the house and says, "Hey, what's this?" "Oh, I don't know. I bought it because I heard it on YouTube video. You can have it." You know, it's gonna get to where it belongs. That's one thing I do know.
Travis, I'd like to share something with everyone.
Yes.
In my spiritual journey, things came to me when I was really young, and it just came back to me as I got older. And what I mean by this is that when I was younger, I used to watch Speed Racer.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
I
So,
love.
oh yeah. So there's this one particular episode. Well, there's two. There's one with the acrobatic racing team, and then there was another episode with Racer X and his brother. But as a kid, this word stuck out to me. And I don't remember names or characters too much, but this one word stuck out to me as a kid, and I never forgot it. And I never heard it again until I started listening to these type of lectures. And that characters in that episode name was Kabbalah.
Whoa. Whoa.
So when I heard it again in my spiritual walk, I said, Kabbalah, I said, that's what it was for me meant to know. And I just think it's interesting now, after all these years, I'm studying the Kabbalah.
Wow. Time to go back. Time to go back and check that out. I absolutely forgot about that. Holy shit.
It was an episode when they were racing through this mountain that opened on one end and it had a volcano on the inside, I think, and they had to race through. And if you didn't make it through, you would get closed inside this this volcano for, I guess, 100 years. And so Racer X, he portrayed this mysterious, successful racer whose name was Kabbalah, who actually had died. And Racer X would always come back and fill in his shoes and dress up as Kabbalah.
Wow. I mean, yeah, there's a mystery to that. X represents 10, of course.
Okay.
I'm definitely gonna go check that again. That was one of my absolute most favorite videos when I was really young, like before Dragon Ball Z, of course.
Hey, Trav, earlier you mentioned two authors. When I was talking about the path, you said a wife and a husband. Their name is Chick Cicero and Sandra Cicero?
Uh-oh, he found it. I was trying to be vague so people don't buy all the copies.
Okay. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
But okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that. What was that?
I'll message you, bro.
Oh.
Got to be more careful. It was Herbert Williams and Rebecca Fillerson.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, they should have like a CD set or something like that, audio set. But yeah, I'd recommend, I'd recommend doing the Kabbalah thing, getting to know the spheres before moving too quickly into that. Not necessarily you, Shango, but I mean like anybody else who is an impulsive buyer.
I think we can all, this is almost you can almost run yourself very close to insanity with the studying, because it's, especially once you start applying this to yourself, your spiritual eyes, quote unquote spiritual eyes, begin to really be opened, and you really start seeing everything that you do. You start hearing everything you're saying. You really, really start monitoring yourself at a very close level, you know?
Yes.
My bad too, y'all. It was $26.99, but it was weird. The paperback copy was like $77. That was weird. I looked for the paperback first, but the hardcover is $26.
Ever since Travis started talking about a whole bunch of this stuff, they running up the prices on all of these books on everything.
Remember Bobby talking about this?
Yeah, he was. Yeah. They start making these books hard to find, and they start charging hundreds of dollars for these books. Let me tell you about my uncle is like 80 years old in New York, and he's in the Asara Set Society. So he's really good friends with Ra'un Nefer Amen, the author of the Metu Neter. And years ago, he says that Ra'un Nefer Amen went to the United Kingdom or England or somewhere like that, and he went into this particular occult esoteric bookstore, and he was looking into different books about the Kabbalah and things like that in the Tree of Life. So he says that the owner of the bookstore had mentioned to him that he has a very very good book that he keeps in the back that not too many people know about, and he said it was based off the African science of the Kabbalah, and it was actually the Metu Neter book that that they actually had in the back, and he was charging like $400 for the book. So my uncle said that the guy with Rob Neff said, "Why didn't you tell him that you was the author of that book?" He was like, "No, because then they would." Exactly. I see the brothers holding it up. He said, "Nah." He said, if I would have told him that, they probably would have took the book out the store. You know what I mean? So they do that once people start talking about particular books, they have these things hidden or the price. Because I noticed that you started talking about the mystical Kabbalah and the initiation book. These books began to start being hard to find. They were selling out. The prices are going up. So, and you're right, Bobby Hemmett mentioned that right there.
Beautiful. I love it.
We got to go underground.
Cause and effect. There's only, well, I can't say that, but what can I say? Influence is very important.
Put it in, put it in our emails, please. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Maintain your frame is what I can say. Maintain your frame. Because this is talking about occult books. This is around the world and dealing with all humans. Maintain your frame. Be ever vigilant. Exert your influence. Always be leading. This is you being aware of what is pushing you, what is motivating you, what is moving you, what is pulling you. Why are you doing what you're doing? If you're able to be aware of that 100% of the time, you get closer to being an actual autonomous being, a living being, a conscious being. You get closer to actually being who you truly are. But if you're ever unaware of why you're doing what you're doing, more than likely you're being pushed. Absolutely, you're being pulled. Yeah, it's getting, I think we kind of wrapped up everything for today. I just wanted to take a little bit of a break because we've been on some heavy reading, and if y'all been doing the work, y'all have, it's been pretty heavy, but I think we should be back on track. I'm going to post an updated schedule for the reading, and yeah, if anybody else has any more questions or anybody in the chat, this will be the time to ask. Good heart, thank you very much. Appreciate you, everything you do. Oh, nice. What's that? What kind of deck is that?
Golden Dawn.
Oh, gotcha. Cool. Is that the Ten of Pentacles?
Nah, that was just a Kabbalah diagram. That's all. This is outside of the card.
KP asks, how mystical is the Kabbalah? I'd have to say it's so mystical. Perhaps too mystical.
It's like mystical Kool-Aid.
Yeah, yeah.
So sweet. Trav, I really appreciate you, man. Thank you always. You're an incredible guy, man. I really appreciate all that you do. And I guess we'll see. I look forward to the new schedule that you're going to put out and catch you on the next time.
Thank you.
Travis, before you go, this is Duran again. I haven't had my one-on-one with you. I've been trying to get together with you on that. So let's try and make it happen because I really want to get it done.
Okay, okay. Are you still free today?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, if you'd like, we can do it after this.
Man, that's really cool. That's great. Yeah. How are we going to go about communicating with one another? What
we can use this app still. Once I close this out, we can use this.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, and that has the added benefit. Like if you want it recorded, I could send you the recording so you can listen to it again later.
Man, that's so sweet. Whew. Thank you. I would like that.
Awesome, awesome. Somebody in the chat on YouTube asks, what deck is that Jason's holding up?
It's Golden Dawn, Robert Wayne.
All right. Yeah. Moving forward, everything's working out perfectly. Don't be afraid of mushrooms because they can be very insightful if you're ready for them. Please do the work. Please do the work. Help us get further. This is KPS, aka Traffic Mages, with LVX 777. I love you guys.